Welcome to Tax Matters. I'm Dr. Arthur Ferdinand, your Fulton County Tax Commissioner. On the show today, we'll hear about the 2013 tax notices that every property owner will receive. How is the value of your property holding up in this economy? How does the 2013 values impact your property tax bill? And what should you do if you disagree with the value placed on your property? The county's chief tax appraiser can answer some of those questions. David Fitzgibbon is one of my guests today. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Dr. Ferdinand.
Well, you are about to send out notices. What is a property tax notice?
A notice is required by law. With some changes in the Georgia law a number of years ago, we're now required to send an annual notice of assessment to each owner of the property that states the prior year's value, the current year's value, and also an estimate of what the taxes would be based on that value using the most recent millage rate that's available to us.
Well, David, I understand the notices usually are mailed in April, but this year they're going to be mailed in May or in June sometime, is it?
We anticipate a mailing date of June 15th. As the date of this taping, we're actually processing those. We're almost done. The dated date of the notice should be June 15th, and there will be 45 days to appeal any value that an owner disagrees with within that 45-day period. We're actually not late this year. We're just a little later than last year. We're doing a little bit more quality control. We're running more reports, and we're a little bit shorter-handed than we were last year, so we're spread a little bit thinner. But we're not required by law to have those notices out until July 1st, so we will meet that deadline.
Okay. When you get those notices out and they are matured, that puts it back to sometime in August when we'll actually mail the bills. I guess people wanted to know how does that affect when they get a tax bill and what it'll do to their due date. So what I'll say is that usually if the bills go out after July 1st, property owners will still get their allotted time by law, as required by law, to pay those bills. And so we have until August 15 to mail out bills for Fulton County because the due date is 10/15. And so they'll have the allotted time of 60 days. And for the city of Atlanta, we'll give them the 45 days that are required by law to pay their property tax. So nobody's going to lose time if the bills go out after August 1st.
That's correct. And of course, you and I know, but the general public might not know, that the later that we do prepare and mail the assessment notices, then the harder that puts the responsibility on you to meet that deadline because of the balancing process and the coordination between our records and your records that has to be done. Unfortunately, we are just a little bit behind where we'd like to be. We would love to be able to mail notices every year in late March, but we just can't complete those analysis and all of the quality control that we need to be able to prepare that. So if we meet our June 15th deadline, which I'm really sure that we will do, then there should not be any delay unless we have some problem between your records and our records not matching and not balancing out, which should not delay any of the tax bills.
Well, I appreciate the effort you're putting into quality control. And we are all stretched thin. The county has tight budgets, so we don't have an infinite number of people to do all the jobs and all the appeals that you have. How many appeals did you have last year?
Last year we had 28,000 appeals, roughly 28,000 appeals.
What do you expect this year?
We hope that we'll be down in the low 20s or under. A number of reasons for that. We're not changing as many values this year because the market seems to have been close to bottoming out. We expect we'll see some values go up in some neighborhoods and some values go down, but overall we think the digest will remain relatively stable without much change one way or the other. We certainly hope we'll have fewer appeals because we think we have ironed out most of the problems that created some of these appeals in the past. We do have a lot of better sales information. We've taken a little bit longer to review that information, and we're reviewing those values on a closer basis this year. Not saying that we'll be perfect, and we certainly would encourage any taxpayer or owner that does not agree with our value to appeal that value, but we would certainly like to have some information as to why, and not just file an appeal just because they don't think that the taxes will be right. You can only appeal a value under the law for value, uniformity, or taxability, meaning that you can only file an appeal if you don't think the value is correct, or if it's not uniform with methodology with other parcels, or if it's taxable or exempt. Most of the appeals are on value. The biggest problem we have is that we don't get anything from the taxpayer on the initial appeal that gives us any idea about why they disagree with our value. It would certainly help us if we understood if they think that it's out of line with their neighbors, or if they have some physical damage to that property, or if they have some information that's not in the public record that we weren't able to research when we set our values.
But you have a very good website, and tax information or property value information is open to the public. And so viewers can go to your website and do some research to see whether or not their values are out of line with others or recent sales. And that would be a really good help, and sometimes they may have recent bank appraisal, and those kind of things could help to give them some ideas to whether the values are good. And so what would you want them to bring to your office if they appeal the values?
Well, this year we have a couple of things that we think are really going to help speed up the process. We did some online appeals last year, but we required some new software, and we have two programs we think are going to make the process much easier, process it much faster, and make it easier for the taxpayers or the appellants to gather information. We are hoping that everyone that files an appeal this year will do so online at fultonassessor.org. If they file online, they will receive a confirmation that their appeal has been received by us and entered into our system. They will also receive a unique tracking number that they can then get on our website and see where that appeal is in the process, whether it's being reviewed by our staff, if we've sent out any notice, if it's been forwarded to the next levels like the Board of Equalization or Superior Court. And we also have another program where we have mediation resolution or dispute resolution. If someone files an appeal online and gets that unique tracking number, then they'll have an opportunity to get onto our site and either make us an offer for settlement, to send us information like appraisals or pictures or comments that might help us to review our information and decide if we need to make an adjustment. The biggest challenge we face is making the public understand that we do a lot of research and analysis to determine our values. And again, we're not perfect, but we have that information available to us. We do review it, and we try to review it on a neighborhood basis. So when an owner just says, I don't like my taxes, or I don't like how much it's gone up, we really don't see any reason that we should review it much further. And unfortunately, if we don't make a change to those values, they're automatically forwarded by law to the next step in the appeals process, which is the Board of Equalization. And at that point in time, they will have to come to a hearing, or they will have to furnish the Board of Equalization some information. We just think that it will make it much easier this year if we can get that information, and if they can file online, that we should be able to process appeals this year at least 50% faster than we have in the past. And they also can look on our website to look at the sales information. They can run Excel spreadsheets. They can sort that any way that they desire if they know how to use Excel. And we think that there's enough information that we can show them exactly how we arrived at our value, and if we have made any kind of error, they should be able to point that out to us.
Now, if someone appeals this year and it's not resolved, the appeals would carry on to other years?
Yes. We still have outstanding appeals at the Board of Equalization and Superior Court level. Mm-hmm. To the best of our knowledge, we have handled all of the prior appeals from prior years at the Board of Assessors level. But once it goes past our level, the process kind of slows down and becomes much more complicated. The Board of Equalization only has a certain amount of resources, so they can only hear and process a certain number of appeals. And of course, court goes even slower. And that becomes more expensive to both the taxpayer and to the county. And so we would love to be able to settle or talk about those appeals at the first level with us so that we can look at the problems and see if there is a adjustment that we can or should make.
I followed your advice last year when I appealed, and it worked very, very well. And in fact, at the Board of Equalization, your folks came in with exactly the same comparables I brought. And I got it all on your website. It was very, very helpful in addressing my appeal. and I got a value that I was satisfied with. We are close in terms of what I thought should be the value and what your office thought would be the value. And we use the same information that you had on your website to come to that conclusion. So I commend you on the information you have on your website. Now, in the local newspaper, not that I believe it all the time, they said that the values in the metro area are up 16%. What's that all about? Because you are talking about relatively flat.
Right. The reports that are usually reported in the media, the most often mentioned is the Case-Shiller report. And these reports are regional, and they are very limited in their scope of data. When you look at the overall average, values are going up, but there are lower values and higher values. And just as we did not lower the values to the extent that the media report said we should, because they are regional reports more than they are little localized reports, we don't intend to raise those values to the media percentages either. The Atlanta market is very localized. Sometimes even as much as one street can be its own neighborhood and can have tremendous changes that other streets and other markets don't have. We have over 35,000 sub-neighborhoods that we review and run statistics on. So we're looking at things on a much more condensed level than the reports are. And most importantly, these reports about the values increasing are compared to March and April or the first quarter or the second quarter of last year. Our appraisal date for ad valorem tax purposes is January 1st, which means that we look at information after that date, but anything that happens later on is going into the next year's digest. So we expect that we'll see some increases more so next year than this year, and keeping in mind that January 1st is the date that we're looking at for our valuation.
Very good. Now, David, the recent legislation froze the millage rate for Fulton County at the current level. How is that going to affect what you do?
What we do, it really won't affect what we do and how we do it. Our main purpose is still to appraise values, to appraise property at what it's worth as of January 1st, meaning what fair market value. What would a willing buyer pay a willing seller for a piece of property without any outside influences? What it will have an effect on, of course, is the county revenues. If the digest drops, the county revenues will drop. If the digest increases, the county revenues will increase, but only based on new growth. We're not allowed by law to receive any windfall from an increase in valuation just based on our office's value. So what we do will stay the same. What you do will stay the same. What the county commissioners do will have to adjust based on what revenue that we can produce.
Okay. As a breakout, give me your website, give the viewers your website so they could find some of this information we spoke about.
The website address is fultonassessor.org, or they can just either do a search on one of the search engines for Fulton County Tax Assessor, and it will lead them right to our site. And once they get there, there are a number of tabs that give them information about everything from how we value, how to file an appeal, how to file for homestead, and a lot of other valuable information.
Thank you. That was very helpful, David. When we come back, we'll hear more about the appeal process and what happens after it leaves the assessor's office. And we'll hear from the director of the Board of Equalization when we come back. Welcome back to Tax Matters. We are talking today about the 2013 property values in the county and the assessment notices that have been mailed to every property owner. The chief tax appraiser already discussed how the values are looking this year, and he also explained a little about what property owners should do if they disagree with the value placed on their property. But his office is just one step in the process to appeal value. Melvin Richardson is the director of the Board of Equalization. His office is also involved in the appeals process. Mr. Richardson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about the Board of Equalization. What is it?
The Board of Equalization process is a statutory process by the state of Georgia to ensure that each appellant taxpayer has the opportunity to address their property assessment. And this process is free, it's fair, and it's impartial.
Last year, how many appeals came to the Board of Equalization from the Board of Assessors?
Well, be mindful that the equalization process is typically a year behind the tax year. For 2011, we had over 31,000 appeals to be certified to the Board of Equalization Office. For 2012, at this time, we've had approximately 16,000 to be certified to BOE.
How many of those have been resolved so far for 2012?
For 2012, approximately 37%, approximately 6,000 have been adjudicated at this time.
Is it a long process? Why is it taking so long?
It is a long process. Historically, back in 2009, 2008, you can probably complete a tax year in approximately 9 to 10 months. But now that since Senate Bill 346 was passed, in which every property owner receives an assessment, the appeals have increased from 15,000 in 2011 in 2010 to 31,000 in 2011. That's more than double. So now the process, which typically begins in the fourth quarter of each year, which is like October, November, it takes approximately 12 months. However, in the statute, each appellant has an opportunity to reschedule his or her appeal hearing at a time and a date that's convenient for them. That will add an additional 3 to 4 months to the appeal process.
Now, why this big jump in appeals? Are people unhappy with values?
Well, once the state made it a requirement that every property owner will receive an assessment, and historically, the tax assessor's office would get a 10% return on appeals. So historically, they may have issued 150, 180,000 assessment notices. Now they're issuing over 300,000, and 10% of that is approximately 30,000.
Seems an awful lot, but I could understand when you give people a prompt saying this is your value, they would do something about it, and that would cause a rise in the number of appeals. How many go from your office to arbitration or Superior Court?
Only approximately maybe 5% will go on to Superior Court. Approximately 95, 96% of the appeals that are certified to the Board of Equalization Office are adjudicated in the Board of Equalization Office.
Well, is it costly to go to court? And what kind of properties end up in court?
It varies. It can be residential property or commercial properties.
You mean rich residential, not like mine?
Well, I don't know how much your property is assessed, but it doesn't matter. If it's a $20,000 assessed property or a $20 million assessed property, the property appellant has the right to continue the appeal to Superior Court if he or she wishes to do so.
Well, I don't know why anybody go to court since they have such a gentleman handling appeals in the Board of Equalization.
Well, we do the best that we can to offer the best customer service during the Board of Equalization process.
Well, let me say I was very pleased with my experience in front of the Board of Equalization last year. But with so many properties going to court, how do you think that affects the county's revenue? Because you still have to bill them at 85% until the process is complete.
Exactly. As you know, once the assessment is certified to the Board of Equalization Office or for the appeal process, you as a commissioner can only collect 85% of that value. And once the adjudication process is completed, then the remaining 15% can be collected at that time. So we're talking about a significant amount of revenue for the county. Especially
if the high prices values are the ones that appeal to the Superior Court and arbitration.
That is true.
Now, after you're finished with a client and they receive a value, what happens then?
When the board adjudicates a process, each appellant receives a decision letter from the board that has been signed by the board members at that time. And they have 30 days from the mailing date of that letter, decision letter, to determine whether or not they want to appeal to Superior Court. And again, approximately 95% agree with the value that's assessed by the Board of Equalization Office. And then there are some, the 5%, that may choose to go on to Superior Court.
Now, after the 30 days have elapsed, what happens?
If they have not made contact with the Board of Tax Assessors Office to continue the appeal, then I think they forfeit their right to appeal the process to Superior Court.
They forfeit their right?
They forfeit their right. But they would get that answer from the Tax Assessor's Office, not the Board of Equalization Office.
Okay. And so the communication is always between the Board of Assessors and the taxpayer, not between you and the taxpayer. Is that what I'm hearing?
When we send out the decision letter, we also include an information letter to let them know that if they want to continue the appeal to Superior Court, that they need to contact the Tax Assessor's Office within 30 days from the mailing date of that decision letter.
Okay. And when it's all, at the end of the 30 days, up to that time, the tax commissioner knows nothing about the value agreed to, correct?
That's correct.
We don't know. What I'm getting at is that some taxpayers, after they get to you, and they agree on a value in a Board of Equalization meeting, they're ecstatic. They're very happy with the value. And they fly down to my office asking for a refund. I would not know anything about what you agreed to with that taxpayer for at least 30 days.
Exactly.
And so there's no way I could process even an adjusted bill, a final bill, or give a refund to the taxpayer, because I don't know what value is agreed to until it's certified finally by the Board of Assessors. And then at that point, it is then shared with the Tax Commission Office for billing. That's the process.
Okay.
What I'm getting at is that when you finalize a value with the taxpayer, please don't send them down to my office for a refund, because I don't know what they agreed to. The only thing I would know about their values is when Mr. Fitzgibbon certifies it to me after 30 days from your final meeting, unless they forfeit their right to appeal. Right?
Right.
Good. That's very helpful. I just want to reduce the frustration on people who come to my office after they receive a final value. Up next, Frankly Ferdinand. My thoughts about today's topic and more contact information. Please stay tuned. That was very helpful. There are several points you should take away from today's discussion to assist you as we enter this year's property tax season. First and foremost, if you think your assessments is excessive, by all means appeal your property valuation to the Board of Assessors. That determines how much property taxes you pay. You have 45 days after you receive your assessment notice. You cannot appeal your tax bill. When you attend your appeal hearing, be armed with sale comparables, recent professional appraisals, and purchase documents if you recently bought your property. You can get a lot of information online on the Board of Assessors website. After you receive a value from the Board of Equalization, you have 30 days to decide whether or not to accept it before the before the Board of Assessors finalizes and certifies the value for use by the tax commissioner to calculate your taxes. When you leave the Board of Equalization hearing with your new agreed upon value, you will not get a refund check or final bill based on that value for at least 30 days, because the law gives you that time to decide what you want to do. So don't go from your Board of Equalization hearing to the tax commissioner's office looking for a refund. You will not get one. You can waive your appeal if you are satisfied. The value received from the Board of Equalization will be fixed for 3 years unless you make changes to the property. With the economy improving and foreclosures decreasing, some of you may see increases in your property values. The assessment notice you will soon receive is important. Pay attention to all documents you receive from the tax offices, because when it comes to your money, tax matters. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Call our main office at 404-730-6100 or email us at taxmatters@fultoncountyga.gov. That's all the time we have today. I'm Arthur Ferdinand. See you next time on Tax Matters.